Right, so we'll make a start. So we're nearly there in creating our full toolbox for crypto. Okay, so we've still got 3 subjects that will complete that toolbox, and then next week, hopefully, you'll be able to understand cryptocurrency and blockchain and so on. So the test is in week 9. Okay, so we've got 6 weeks or so. Make sure you're studying the material, you're reading it, you're answering the questions, and don't leave it to the end. Okay, so try to cover each unit, try to cover the fundamentals, and really debate. So the outline that we've got, so hopefully you've read up on ciphers and fundamentals and on symmetric key. So on the symmetric key page, it should show you some sample questions as to what we're looking at MSc level. Okay, so it's an open book test, but don't just walk into the exam thinking that you're just going to read your books and do other things. The questions will be written in such a way that going and searching for information is going to penalise you. So you really need to understand the core fundamentals and really ask some of the things. So we've given you a whole lot of questions here that are the kind of things that we might ask, but those questions won't be in the test, but they'll be around the same kind of area. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about the test and what's coming up? 3 questions, half an hour each, done on Moodle, descriptive type questions. That's our focus. Okay? So there's a whole lot of things on the web page that you can actually have a look, and there's other things there. So try if you can keep up to date with the material. So I've added this one today. So the 3 areas that we'll go into today are public key encryption, key exchange, and digital search in a couple of hours. It's a lot to cover, so you've got a lot of reading to do. Okay, but it's important that you understand them all together and how they all fit together. So we'll do some basics about what public key really is, what it's good at, and probably what it doesn't do. What it doesn't do is encrypt lots of data. That's a non-starter. What it also, where it's also weak is that when quantum computers come along, we might be in trouble. So the methods I'm going to outline are the 3 methods that are likely to be cracked with a quantum computer. So if somebody watches this lecture in 10 years' time, they'll probably laugh at it. So there are researchers investigating new methods of public key, but the world has been built around these 3 methods, especially the first 2. So RSA has been around for a long time. It still works. Most people still have an RSA certificate for their system. It is there. You're not going to get rid of it, but it's really showing its age now. The world, though, is moving towards this guy here, elliptic curve, ECC. If you've got a smart card for your bank, it's ECC in there. If you've got an IoT, RFID tag, that's elliptic curve. If you use the Tor network, that's elliptic curve. If you're using a Bitcoin or a blockchain, it's elliptic curve. So elliptic curve has kind of taken over the world because its keys and its processing is much smaller than RSA. Let's look at another one. Because we're near the home of John Napier, we'll have a look at Elgamal, which is another public key encryption method. Okay, so that's the core of what we're going to do in the first part. Please ask questions as we go along. Okay, so there's the 3 use cases of public key. Okay? Those are the fundamental things that public key does well. What's the number one thing? This one. This one here is where public key really comes in. And basically what it is that, we get this right. So Alice needs to prove her identity to Bob. So too few things we can actually prove that somebody really said something and that the server that we're connecting to actually is a valid one. In the days before Let's Encrypt and free digital certificates, we used to give the advice, and I think Barclays still give the advice, is if you look for the certificate, then everything is okay. But now with free certificates, you can't even trust the little green bar on it. So how do we find a credible way to prove identity? So the way it's done is that Alice generates a key pair. She can do it whenever she wants. And she then has defined some way to advertise to Bob what her key actually is. So a great way is to have a keyring. So you have a keyring so that Bob pops the key in his keyring, and whenever he needs to prove Alice's identity, he takes her public key of his keyring. That's the way the PGP was meant to work. It doesn't work. Few people use that method because it's clunky and cumbersome. None of you here probably have a keyring with all the people that you communicate with. I can give you my public key if you want. It just doesn't work that well. So we use a digital certificate to be able to get it over, and we've got to make sure the digital certificate is signed by a trusted entity. So later on we'll go into PKI, public key infrastructure, and how that whole thing works or doesn't work. So basically what happens is that Alice signs with her private key some data, might be the hash of a message. She'll then sign it. She then sends that over as a proof of identity. So over here, Bob takes the public key of Alice and checks signed data. If he is able to get the same hash, then everything checks out, and Alice is proven identity. Does everybody get that? It's difficult to move on if you don't see where that fits in. But that's the fundamental part. That's what we're building. That's the infrastructure. You can have many key pairs, one for your bank, one for your identity, one for your healthcare, and so on. But the protection of the private key is fundamental in this. Lose that, and you'll lose your identity. The biggest problem on the internet is a failure of the trust infrastructure of a major cloud provider, major company. So it will happen, it'll happen sometime soon. It happened with companies like RSA and Adobe, where they lost the private key, and they had to go and hunt every single thing that had been signed by that entity and not trust it anymore. The key revocation infrastructure around the world is a disaster. It doesn't work. How do you revoke your keys? If somebody's stolen your identity, how do you revoke them? How do you get rid of it? It's a really difficult challenge, but it's being solved, hopefully. So that's one. The other one that's really good is that what Alice can do, so let's say that Alice is Google, and Bob's going to buy something. So we can do key exchange. So as we'll find later, Bob and Alice can talk in free space, and Eve is listening, and at the end they magically create the same key. That's key exchange. We'll look at the Herman method. And an even better method is that Alice tells Bob, create your key. Tell me what you want, AES, CDS, I can support it, it's okay, everything's fine. And create your own key. If you don't trust me, create your own key that we'll use for the session. And then what I'll do is I'll send you my public key. You encrypt the the key with my public key, send it back, and then I'll be able to have a shared key. So it's a brilliant application, really, because it is secure. So as long as RSA and the method, public key method, is secure, that's fine. But what's to stop somebody eventually getting the private key? So if, say, Google was hacked, then everybody who's listened to every single data packet on Google would then be able to crack codes. So you need to understand how long the key is valid for and how long you create the code. So I'll have a lamp. And then the other way it's hardly ever used, is that we can take some data, we can encrypt it, and then we can decrypt it with a private key. It doesn't work. Okay, the processing overhead is massive. Okay, symmetric key is there for that type of application. It does the grunt and it's fast. The public key doesn't. That just doesn't work. So our main use cases are really these two in there, and that's what we're focused on. Does everybody see that there? Good. So we're all on the same page. So the three methods that we have are three things that computers find horrible. They find it absolutely horrible. They don't have the processing power and the memory to properly crack these methods. So one thing they don't like to do is to take two large numbers and then to be able to factorize it back. Because we find with the RSA method, we publicly tell everybody what n is. We select two prime numbers and we tell the whole world, there you go, crack it if you want. If you use 5 12-bit numbers, you're stuffed. Okay? So that's where Poodle, you wouldn't believe the number of sites that are still open to Poodle. If you want to make some money, go and do a scan around sites, find all the Poodle, and send an email to the company saying, you've got Poodles. And these are serious sites. They're not your little businesses. They're law enforcement, they're big companies and so on. And they're weak to Poodle because they support a downgrade attack. So a downgrade attack is I'm going to pick the weakest crypto possible. When I'm negotiating with the site, I'll force it into MD5. I'll force you into short keys that I can crack. And once they crack the key, that's it. Their long-term keys gone, and we've had it. So it's not just that, okay, we've got a bit of a weakness. They'll crack the private key of the company overall because of the downgrade. So Poodle and Beast and all those things were caused by the US embargo of encryption. So encryption is seen as high-grade munitions, up there with nuclear. And there was an export embargo when SSL was first created, and the keys to be used were 512-bit RSA, which was just on the cusp of what law enforcement could crack at that time. But unfortunately, as time's moved on, it's not that difficult. So we've kept increasing the size of this, and we're now up, where are we? Where do you think? If you were to buy an RSA certificate, what do you think the key size would be?
Put it on your phone.
Was it?
You can put it on your phone.
Yeah. No. What size would the key number of bits in the keys?
64?
64.
It's 256 or 512.
No, a lot more.
49.
And 2K at least 2048 bit is the starting point. I think that anything below that just wouldn't be possible. 4096 is the way that we're generally going with RSA keys, just in case. So the other methods that we have is discrete logarithms. We take a prime number and we take what's called a generator, explain what a generator is, and then we raise it to a random value, x, And even although we know the value of y, we know the value of g, we know the value of p, because of discrete logarithms, it's really difficult for us to find x in there. So x can be so many values within the space between 0 and p prime number. And we're going to have to search through them all. Just as too difficult a task for a computer system. Okay, so it's used, you can see it's used in key exchange mainly, but it can also be used in public key with Elgamal. And again, we have a secret key and we have a public key. But the guy who's taken over the world just now is ECC. So ECC is just trampling everything in its wake. So it's smart cars, IoT, Tor, Bitcoin, you name it, it's in there. It's the #1 method, which means that there are agencies pushing standards that might be crackable. So there was a case recently that a standard was pushed for an elliptic curve that could be cracked, possibly. So the industry has turned away from that one. So we find that Tor and blockchain, Bitcoin are using curve that I'll show you later. That's the one that you want to be using, because the other one doesn't look great, doesn't have a great track record that could have been hacked. Okay, so there's the three main methods, kind of old, kind of new, and still around, but it's a kind of core thing of, it's the linear equation of crypto. You can't avoid this magical formula. So it might not look much, but that guy is doing so much work in transforming systems. So that's our public key. That's the three different methods that we have, and hopefully we'll be able to outline it. So this is from a research paper, and I think it's a really cool way of describing it. So let's say that you wanted to crack crypto. How much energy would you need to crack it? So you see now it takes all the electricity of Ireland to create one hash of to create the hashes within Bitcoin. So how much energy would you have to buy to crack? So with 35-bit symmetric key encryption, 70-bit elliptic curve, and 242-bit RSA, it would take the energy to boil a teaspoon of water, which is nothing. So almost in an instance, it would be cracked. So anything that's 35 bits, you could probably not even use a GPU. You could probably just use your phone to crack it. So that's why I say 72 bits is getting more challenging. So here's 72 bits about here, okay? For 50-bit symmetric, about 500-bit RSA, you're going to need to boil a shower of water. And then if you go up, a pool, and then all the rain in the world, I think you would need, you can imagine the energy you would need to do that. So that's us passing the 1,000 RSA mark. Quite significant because a lot of the certificates are in that. So if you have enough to pay the bill to boil rain water, which there are people in the world that have got that budget, not me, but there are people who can afford to pay to boil rain from there. And then you'll need a lake. You need to boil a lake if you want to crack there. So this is elliptic curve, okay, 180, 90 bits. So if you want to crack 90 bits, you're going to need to pay the bill to heat up Loch Lomond. It's going to take a while, I think, especially Loch Lomond, because it's kind of cold this time of year. So that'll take a while, and then you've got to boil the sea. Yeah, that's going to be really expensive for if anybody's ever tried it. It's going to take a while. You'll get it up to maybe a few degrees of global warming but then you're going to have to get the kettles on and shut that water as quickly as you can. So that's a lot. That's the amount of water you're going to have to. That's the volume that you're going to have to boil to crack 105-bit symmetric PES, 210-bit elliptic curve, and 1900 RSA. Okay. And there are many people that have the budget that can pay for that electricity bill. Then you've got global security, that's to heat up everything. And then solar, I don't know what that is, that's like the Milky Way or something like that. You have to heat up the Milky Way. It's going to take you a long time, because it's pretty big. Okay, so that kind of shows you that symmetric is smaller keys. Elliptic curve are bigger, but public key and RSA is just crazy sizes of keys. Okay. Well, if you remember one thing today, it's boiling water in Loch Lomond and how that relates to encryption. Right then, so you're not going to understand this straight off. Okay, so I say that off the bat. You're not going to understand it unless you studied it before. So please don't worry. You don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it. You get it, and you go, I've got it. And you're never going to get rid of it. It'll be an itch, but you'll get it, and you'll really get it. Okay? So don't worry if you don't get this straight away. It works. I can assure you. It's been around for 40 years, so hopefully it works. So I'm going to explain it, and you're probably not going to get it, but hopefully you will eventually when you're studying. So let's give it a try. So we create two prime numbers, P and Q, so that should be Q there. We create P and Q, and we multiply them together to give us a value of N. So the problem that we have, or that computers have, is you got a question? Oh, is please say if anybody has any questions, just ask. But I'll follow up, and please try to sort of work your way through this. So you get the value of N, and it's really difficult for you to be able to factorize N. But quantum computers will be able to do it. So that's the weakness of this method. And it was really cracked by these guys, Rivest, Shamir, and Alderman. Shamir has a long track record of creating great Israeli cryptographer, great track record, amazing, I mean, really groundbreaking, world-leading research in this area. If you've got a crypto protocol, Shamir will have a go at it and break it for you. Okay, so he has such an amazing brain, and he was part of the team that created RSA. Whitfield Diffie proposed that it might be possible. We'll come back to him later, but it was these three guys, and I think it was a kind of after party thing where they'd have a few drinks and so on. And you know, when you wake up, an idea is there. So it's that. Sometimes I go to sleep and then you have an idea and you're trying to solve it, and you wake up and you've solved the idea. So I think it was a bit like that. They came up with this idea of public key encryption. So here's the method here. We take two prime numbers, and they're very big prime numbers, P and Q. We then create what's called the modulus, or N, which is P times Q. We then work out a value called phi. Okay, so phi is equal to P minus 1 times Q minus 1. So if we take 3 and 11, we appreciate they're very small numbers. We'll take 3 and 11 here, and the value of phi is 20. Okay? So this is where the GCD comes in that we looked at, the greatest common denominator. We want a GCD of 1. There to be no shared factor between the value of phi and the encryption key that we pick, the value of E. So what are the factors of phi? 20. What values go into 20? 10, 5, 4, 2. 2 is a fundamental one because 2 kills 4, 6, and so on. 2 and 5 are fundamental things in any factor of those. So we can't pick those values. And this is where most students struggle. Just pick a value. No. Just pick a value that isn't one of those numbers and it's fine. So all you have to do here is not pick one of those values that shares a factor with 20. GCD is equal to 1 between E and phi. So I'll keep it easy. I'll pick 3. Okay, 3 isn't a factor of 20. I do a quick check. It's fine. That's okay. I can pick 3. My public key now becomes 3, 33. That's it. Nothing else. The E value and the N value there. Okay, so there's my key. Now, and this is the next problem. So don't worry, there's 3 lines of Python that does this, but we want you to understand what's going on here. So there's what's called the inverse mod function that goes on here. So the next thing is that when I multiply my decryption key by the value of E, and I take the mod of phi, I want to get 1. Okay? You can study up the background to it. There's a little theory that goes along with this that makes it work, but it does work. So I go 1 times 3 mod 20, that's 3, doesn't work. 2, that's 6, that doesn't work. 6 mod 20 gives me 14, and so on. So I'll generally keep going and keep testing until I get to 6, which is 3 times 6, 18 mod 20 gives what? 18 mod 20 gives us 18. Okay, so that's the remainder. So 0 remainder 18. And then I try 7, and 7 works because 7 times 3 is 21. Mod 20 gives me 1. So my first possible decryption key is 7. So I could keep going and I could find other ones, but 7 will work. Does anybody see that at this present time, what I've done there, and could maybe follow what I've done? I've got lots of examples that you can try it. So my decryption key, my private key, becomes 733. Okay, so I need to keep that secret. Obviously, the numbers we'll be dealing with are massive. They won't be 7 and 33 because that's not too difficult to find that. So in the next part, what we do is that we take the cipher. This is known as an exponential cipher function, fairly standard in it, the most evil function in the world. If you look at the most evil piece of maths, then there are a lot of people in the world that see this equation as one of the worst because it stops people from looking at what you're doing and so on. So it's a pretty evil, or it's a wonderful equation because it protects privacy and things like that. So now we have the cipher is equal to the message to the power of E mod n, where n is r times q. So as an example, 5 to the power of 3 mod 33 is 26. 26 is the cipher. We then take the cipher, raise it to the power of d, take mod n, and wonderfully it comes back as 5 again. So that's the way that it works, and I think that's just pure genius in its scope. So if I show you some examples here, so there's my P and Q. 2 is a prime number. I'll pick another one just in case. There's 5 and 11. Okay, I calculate n, and then I calculate phi, and then I'm going to pick a value that allows me not to share a factor with this one here. 40, so I can't pick 2, I can pick 3 if I want. So I've picked 29 in this case. I can generate the D value here with a bit of maths, and then that becomes my public and private key. Unfortunately, I've chosen the same keys from there. But that's the way that it works, and we've got examples for you there that you can try out and to see if they work. Okay, we'll go. Yeah.
Sir, only confusion about E, sir, please. Get me, please.
So E is give me some numbers. Say so pick. So let's say we pick 5, and we put a Q. Is 9 possible?
Yeah.
No.
What's
That's not fine.
7? Okay, we'll go for 7. That's prime numbers.
35.
35. Okay. Next step. What's 5?
I mean, -1 and -1. So I have 7 minus 1 and 5 minus 1.
Which is
7 minus 1 multiplied by 5 minus 1. So 4 multiplied by 6.
24.
Yeah,
So the
24.
factors of that are 2, obviously 4, 6, 8, so on. So I could pick 3.
No.
7. Can't pick 3. It does. I could pick 7. Yeah, I pick 7. Okay. So I know it's confusing. Just go for a value, pick it, and it'll work as long as it doesn't show a sheer factor. The GCD, again in Python, a couple of lines to check that there isn't a shared factor.
So, sir, how are you picking? What's the criteria of picking?
The GCD is equal to 1 between 5 and E. There is no common factor between the value of 5 and the value of E. Okay. So there is code that does that. So I've got examples that are worked out for you. So this is what it looks like in real life. Or real life there, if you can see that. E, just everybody uses the same E value. That's a hex value, 65,636. Everybody uses that E value. Because it's a prime number, you're not going to have any problems with the value that you've got for n. There's the n value that we've chosen here, comes back here, and then there's the d value. The decryption key is always going to be a lot bigger. But if you did the maths, then that times that mod n mod 5 will give you the one there. Okay, so that's the way that it works. It might not make sense to you just now, but hopefully once you read up the material and try a few tutorial examples that it will make sense. Does anybody have any questions just now? I know that choosing is a strange concept to perhaps. Okay, so the RSA method is used extensively for creating key pairs. It's a standard method. But the guy who's really taken over is elliptic curve, or ECC. And you'll see a lot of smart cards, IoT devices. Many products now support elliptic curve public key. So it's using Bitcoin, Tor, IoT, and it uses this curve here. So the other curve that's pushed through the standards agency isn't recommended, and very few people use it. So the standard, to use it, there's another curve there, it's not really used. So the way that elliptic curve works is there's a maths formula to it, so that's the kind of maths behind it. You don't have to worry about that, because we're just going to pick a curve, and Python has all the has all the methods. What we want to do is to understand the basic operation. And the way that elliptic curve works when you actually plot it is that if I take a point on the elliptic curve and I draw a straight line to it, I will always cut the curve at 2 points, here and here. And no matter where I do my line, it's always going to be there. I'm always going to find another point somewhere else. It's a wonderful curve that I just pick a point, draw a straight line, and then everything works there. So what we do is that we pick a random number. And the random number, if you remember your school, at school, the gradient of a straight line, this is the gradient here. So the value that we pick is the gradient of that straight line. So we pick up a point, we draw the straight line, and the point that we have here is a public key. So everybody knows what our private key is, P, and everybody knows the point generator here, G, and then we advertise this point here. You see, that's a bit confusing, but this is the P point here, X, Y coordinate, and we've picked a random number, and it produces a straight line, it produces this point here. The difficulty here is that computers, and it might seem strange, but that's a really difficult task. Even though that I know that point, and I know that point, computers cannot work out that division. So they cannot work out what the value of the gradient is, what n is, even though they know that, and they know that. The numbers we deal with are absolutely massive. It is impossible to take those 2 points and work out what the gradient is between them. So at school, you did it really easily. It kind of worked. In this, you're dealing with such large numbers that it's almost impossible to do that. Okay, so your private key is n. The generator is known to everybody. And then the P is your prime number. It's your public key that you tell everybody. So the curve that everybody uses is this one here, hopefully. This is going to work. Just let me try and find this one. That's it. And there, if you were to plot it mathematically, that's kind of what it's like. So as I said, you'll pick a point on this curve. You'll then generate a random number, big random number, and then you'll create a gradient for that, and then hopefully you'll pick a point off, and that point becomes your public key. Does anybody get that at this point? Now, it may take a while, and you need to go through some examples, but that's the way that it actually works. So that's the core behind the method. So we'll go into this in a little bit more detail next week when we look at Bitcoin. So this is where Bitcoin works. So Bitcoin, you create your private key, so you shouldn't lose that. If somebody gets that, then they'll take all the money from your account because they can sign for a transaction. So with elliptic curve, we take our private key, we create an address. Let's use base 58. Does anybody know why we use base 58? I'll explain it next week. What's the difference in base 58 and base 64? It just drops off a few characters that are really difficult, like 0 and O can be confused. Base 58 gets rid of those ones that everybody confuses. So we won't find an O and a 0 in a Bitcoin address because we've got rid of them. So we create what's called a WIF private key. We need to keep that secure. Then from elliptic curve, we create the public key from there. So the public key is the key that we're going to sign our transactions with. The hash of that, and then that becomes our address. So we'll publicize that. So when you see Bitcoin transactions, I'll show you them. You'll see that address, and that's a signature of the Elliptic Curve public key. Okay, so we'll go into more detail, but it's increasingly used as a core method. Okay, so we'll go into detail next week, but basically when you do a transaction, all you need is Alice's public address. So you say, pay Alice 10 Bitcoins, here's the address, and then you take your private key, and then you sign that transaction. That goes on to the blockchain. So Alice doesn't receive that at all. Magically, she gets a credit in her account when she looks at it, but she never receives anything really. And she hasn't, all she's done is told Bob where her public address is, and there. The public address is generated from the hash of that public key, and then that goes in there, and then it's this one here. So if Bob loses his private key, then Eve can sign transactions for him. Okay, we'll go into more detail next week about how it works and how it adds onto the blockchain and so on. But that's the basics of them. So we can use OpenSSL to have a look at the basic parameters that we're using to generate our keys. So in this case, we're using this sept P256 key 1. Okay, so that's our elliptic curve that we looked at before. This is the Bitcoin one. So if you wanted to generate a Bitcoin address, this is the curve that you'd be using. So then generate key, and then I'm going to put the private key into this file here. Okay, this is a fairly standard way that we represent our keys. There's our private key in there, and we've got to store the parameters in it so that whoever wants to read our private key will be able to know the method and the curve things and the G value and so on. So that's how we get that. And then so this is what it looks like in a hex format. So as you remember, so the private key is this gradient. So that's the random value, the gradient. The public key is a much bigger value. So in this case, we have 256 bits key here, but our public key is 512. So it's typically double the size of our private key. This value here is the x, y coordinate of the curve when we project from our point G up this gradient, we get this point. That becomes our public key. Okay, so in this way, we've generated from our private key, we've generated a public key that will actually work. Okay, and oops, so I'll show you an example. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just generate one. You see, pretty quick in generating. A bit of a delay there. I'll generate a few in there. So there's one there. Okay, so that's a private key in there in a hex format, and then you then take the generator. You can't see the generator in here, but it'll be a generated value. We take the gradient, and then we'll end up with this point here. Okay, and that's the values that we use there. I'll try and find where we're at. Okay, so if we now want to look at the parameters that have been used for the elliptic curve. Then we can see here there's the prime number that we're using for this operation, and there's the generator. So this is the point that we've used to project the value up. And there's other parameters there that we use inside the elliptic curve method to specify the curve that we're actually using. But the one I showed before, this is a fairly standard value of G, and so on. Okay, so I'm not expecting you to understand this straight away. It takes a little bit of just trying out and trying to understand, read some other material, and see if you can get it to work. So this is the Tor network. So Tor network gets a very bad press. People call it the dark web and the evil web, and that's where bad things happen. It wasn't intended to be like that. It was how the internet should have been created. If it was created now, it would look like this, and it certainly wouldn't look like SSL and things like this. So this is how it should work. How it should work is that each node, it can be any node, can route data. Your laptop, if it's not doing anything, doesn't have to go through Cisco switch routers in a formal way. Why can't it go any way that it wants? In fact, I don't want it to go through that country. Why don't you send it off? So the Tor network builds up a route and finds a route between Bob and Alice. Each of the routes along the way negotiate a key, their own symmetric key. So each node has a symmetric key. 256 AES, I think, is the latest Tor update, but it might be 128-bit, but it's secure anyway. So each one will create a key. The way they negotiate is with the elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman method. So they do a negotiation with each on the key. So with Bob and Alice, there's a negotiation, creates that one. This one here creates that one, and then creates that one. Then all the keys are bundled back to Bob, and Bob must encrypt in the right order. So Bob will encrypt with the red key, the key of here, then with the green key, and then with the purple key. So the data goes out, and if law enforcement is sitting there, they'll never be able to read it because it's encrypted with the 3 keys. If they got 1 key, they'd be lucky, but to crack 3 keys is almost impossible.
And the service providers tell you what you're sending over. Isn't there always a warning on Tor when you use it that the service providers, between you and the service provider, they can see what's...
No. Even with SSL, they might use a smart firewall that breaks the... Companies will use a proxy firewall. So you think you're connected to Gmail, but you're not. That's how bad SSL actually is, that people can break the communication. In the Tor network, nobody can see anything. The way that they typically do it is the traffic analysis. This looks like the BBC. This looks like YouTube. You're streaming a video, I think, because the traffic looks like that. I think you're now uploading a file because I've seen you doing that before. But bring in 20 people on the local network and they're all doing streaming Spotify. So it works in the lab, but there's no way. So I don't think there is any methods that anybody can actually see. Well, there is definitely not. The only way that does anybody know how this has been hacked in the past? What is it? Exit nodes, yeah. So the exit nodes, this is an encrypted, take over the exit node, also sit on the network, and eventually you'll be part of a conversation. So if you provide enough nodes here, then just occasionally you manage to get all the encryption keys in it's like the slot machine. 3 bells, yes. Yes, and funded funded. And ethically, they did it for the right reasons, and they still do. Okay, so don't let anybody tell you that this is wrong. This is right. And it is used in repressive regimes. It is used against repressive regimes. There are some countries in the world who will block encrypted traffic and send you to jail if you are doing that. So they did it for the right intent. So if you can sit long enough, ethically, it's really difficult. So to stand up at a conference and say you've broken Tor has many challenges from an academic point of view, because you're breaching somebody's privacy. They joined that network thinking that they were secure, and you've just broken it. So a few papers have been pulled before their presentation because of the ethics, and also because of the funder wasn't very pleased that some of the research went out. But Tor have generally coped with everything that has come along. So it goes through, and the first node takes its key off. The second node takes its key off. And then the third node, as you say, the exit node, will take that off. It's unencrypted here, but you can then skin it with HTTPS. In fact, on the dark web, it's integrated. The service at one end links to the service at the other end, and there's no gateway node. So that's why you need a Tor browser to view the dark web, because you need that linkage to the end, so there isn't the end gateway node there. So the core thing here is that elliptic curve was the one that was chosen to negotiate the keys for each of the nodes. No RSA in there at all. It was purely elliptic curve for the key exchange that we have. Okay, so that's how the Tor network kind of works. So if you're interested, that's the elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. We'll go over the Diffie-Hellman method in a little while, but we have a public string, and they do some negotiation, and then the Tor node will have a symmetric key at the end of it. Okay, so as a last method, we have Elgamal. You have a generator value, an x value, mod p, and then that generates this value here. So I'll explain this. The g value needs to be selected so that for all the values up to p for x, you will always generate a unique value of y. Okay, you need to go away and have a look at this, but there are values of g that just don't work. So I've put examples in there. So for a prime number of 53, the only values that will work are these values. So you can't pick 4 and so on. And the reason for it is that when I take a g value and I raise it to the power of x, and I do my mod p, then this one works. We get a different value here. This one doesn't work, because when I do my calculation, it's repeating back there, so I can't pick 3 in this case for this prime number. 4, does 4 work? Four doesn't work. Sorry, 4 doesn't work because it's repeating. It's repeating around here again. 5 doesn't work. 6 works. Okay, so the generator values, you've got to make sure that it can generate the values that you require. Okay, so that's the basics of public key. Does anybody have any questions? You do need to go away and study this and learn and put it into some context, do some simple things. So there's no way that you'll understand this straight away, but you'll get it, and it'll be a magical moment, possibly. Any questions at all?